You want all the information about the VKB STECS with the new Space Throttle Grip, everything about the installation and configuration, as well as the various modular adjustment options? Then you are in the right place. Because in this review we take a detailed look at the latest version of the VKB STECS, namely in the Space Throttle Grip version. Because VKB has left us a throttle in advance for the test, and we have checked it truly and give you a complete overview of what you can expect with it. And for this we have even disassembled it several times to show you everything. And of course, no specifications have been made by VKB for the test, so no influence. It's our own private opinion. In the next few minutes, we will go from the content of the package and the scope of delivery through the various functions and buttons to the exchange of different springs for the Space Throttle Grip, the setup and calibration, as well as the use in-game in Star Citizen. The VKB STECS throttle system Mark II has been on the market for some time now, but the Space Throttle Grip version designed for space simulations is brand new. And this version is most similar to the STECS Throttle System Mark II Mini Plus for about $290 or just under €260. This Space Throttle Grip variant, so STG, uses the same basis as the STECS Mini Plus. So, among other things, a stable steel base plate with slider-resistant rubber pads that can be exchanged, or the possibility of attaching the whole thing to your sim rig or a chair holder. And of course the MFH compatibility, the multifunctional holder, so we have the option of adding additional front extension modules. The structure parts are reinforced fiberglass and the grips and base are made of ABS plastic. In the area of the sensors, the contactless Mars sensors with high resolution and precise control are used. And as with other VKB joysticks and controllers, we have also integrated a 32-bit HRM controller into the base and the grips. And in addition, we have an onboard memory for various profiles and, of course, the possibility of firmware updates via the USB connection. Especially for space sims, of course, the possibility of the various axes is very interesting, as we can not only use the forward and backward movement for the main loop with the slider, but also a tilt mechanism for lateral and vertical strafing on the handle. So to speak, a joystick directly on the slider. All main axes are ball bearing and we have an adjustable resistance for the axes and individual preferences with a friction control. But let's get to the special features of the new Space Throttle Grip from VKB STECS. The new STG is fully compatible with an existing STECS base, but actually there are no pre-order options. For the STG, we also have the choice between a left and right configuration. But let's get to buttons and switches. Here we have access to 2 5-way heads, 2 3-way heads, a space brake, which serves as its own axis in the setting and also in the game, a laser power regulator, a speed limiter, and additional modules such as triggers and analog mini sticks are also available. And of course, the same modularity applies to the STECS base. So we can swap head switches for mini sticks, adjust the handle modules, and of course add various stem or atom models. In total, we get 20 native buttons in the STG version and 43 usable functions, without any software or virtual keys. And in addition, there are the axes of the throttle itself and the own axis again from the Space Throttle Grip. All in all, more than enough functions and buttons for a throttle. Because with the STECS STG, it is basically possible to control the whole ship completely. At the base, we find behind 2 flaps the red-marked single buttons as well as the further single switches marked from 1 to 4. The wheel called push has the function to turn right and left, to tilt in 4 directions and to press directly. In addition, at the base on the right side, there is another red single switch, an inserted button and a 4-way rotary wheel. And with these buttons we can also configure the different profiles that will be safe on the device itself, so you can use profiles for each game. Of course, we find some more buttons on the STG. In addition to single buttons like the B2, a speed limiter which allows an infinite scroll up and down as well as a press, there is also a 3-way head. The space brake system is prominently staged, where we can also configure an analog axis within the software. In the background, here we have a spring. As soon as we let go the whole thing, the space brake automatically switches back. And finally, we have a 5-way head with a head 1 and the 3-way head and the single button with H1. Also in addition, there is a 3-way head at the front area and the button for the pointer and the laser power rotary wheel, which shows a limitation. So a lot of buttons. In the scope of delivery, we find in addition to a 1.8 meter long USB 2 cable, a card with instructions and installation videos, alternative rubber feeds, all necessary tools and some springs. So everything we need for a complete adjustment and installation of the STG. Without any tools, the resistance of the throttle itself can be adjusted. All through we have 2 screws here, which can open or close with increase or decrease. This allows us to adjust the throttle resistance smooth to tight. And via the detent system and the friction we have the possibility to define programmable physical resistances for afterburners or reverse areas over software. And since the STG version of the throttle only has one thrust axis, it is urgent to recommend that the resistance for the adjustments of the lightness or heaviness for both sides be equal, otherwise we have a one-sided load. In principle, this range is very light, which means that the regulator almost moves by itself when the tap it, up to very firm resistance setting possible. With high resistances and a deposit, for example, on a table, that is, if you do not move the STG, you will then have the problem that you like to push your STG over the table. In principle, however, the weight of the base is more than sufficient to avoid pushing the STG in normal adjustments over a table. With too little resistance, the throttle moves mainly in slightly forward-leaning positions by itself through the weight forward. Therefore, we recommend basically a low resistance to keep it in place. As a further adjustment option, we can program the detents and adapt the physical resistances flexibly. In the standard, a ball bearing physical center setting is available. Here we can also define a zero position without having to look. And also, VKB offers various variants via the accessories shop. For normal use, however, the standard is more than sufficient. We can also vary the degrees, whereby we can operate our settings via a later calibration. The supply tools also offer all the possibilities here, and you do not need any foreign tools to make changes for the base or for the grip, for example. Also included in the scope of delivery is a limitation to limit the grip in the maximum extension and to set variables here as well. This makes it possible to limit the way you have to go back via the throttle to a smaller playing area. But here again the note that you then have to carry out another calibration in the VKB software in accordance with the first configuration in order to implement the respective limit radius accordingly in the software. But more on this in the next section, when we look at the setup and calibration of the STECS. Because we also have some settings and configuration options for the grip itself. Here we can set the resistance of the clutch after removing the flap and also with the included tools. But in order to change the springs on the grip, we need a lot more effort and a little more screwing. And there are a lot of screws. Because in order to get to this, we have to disassemble the entire grip and of course first remove it from the base. To do this, we first remove the protective flaps directly on the throttle side, which are screwed with 3 screws and of course on each side. Below are the actual screws that connect the handle to the base, which we also remove. And when pulling of the connection cable, a little fingertip feeling is required not to damage it. And subsequently, we can then separate the handle, so the grip, from the base. And after removing the last 4 screws at the bottom, we also have access to the inner life, in which we also remove the individual housing screws. Also, make sure not to bend the cable or spring it out. Finally, in order to adjust or replace the springs itself, we also need the included pull tool, so the little keychain. And of course, there are some different springs available in different strength. To pull out the spring, we thread the tabs on the spring and pull hard once. But make sure not to damage any surrounding parts and proceed slowly and carefully. And on the same way, we finally insert the new spring. Basically, we recommend turning the stacks in the standard configuration a few times first and then adjusting the springs if you find this too easy or too difficult to handle, because it's a lot of effort to change these springs. In addition, we have the option of using the available adjustment options for the different switches or different heads and installing others accordingly. Here you need the same steps to get to these. After completion, we reinstall the housing screws and screw the whole thing back on and reassemble everything backwards. And as a tip, before you put the whole thing together, check if all the buttons work as well. And if you already use a STECS throttle, it is of course also fully compatible with the STG handle. This is directly adjustable on the stacks because the base is identical to the previous versions. And with that, we come to the next area, the installation on your PC and the first configuration, the first setup, as well as the calibration. Basically, the stacks can be inserted directly into an existing VKB ecosystem or used as a standalone. For connection, you only need the USB 2 connection cable. And via the VKB website, you have the option of downloading the VKB device config X in the download area. This is a standalone file and easy executable that configures your stacks and all VKB joysticks. And the data is stored directly on your device. But first, after download, you need to unpack the zip file. Here, you start a VKB device config X as an administrator and you should provide access. The software shows you all connected devices. And if you now connect the new stacks via USB to the computer, it will be automatically recognized and brought into the standard configuration, so profile 1. And analogous to other VKB devices, which we have covered in detail in various videos here on the channel, we also have the option of carrying out a firmware update accordingly, should this be available. In the area of info, we can see the current used firmware version, and also via the VKB website on the downloads, we have the option of downloading all the firmware for the VKB devices in one package and updating them accordingly. In our case, the firmware update was not yet necessary. But before we first use, it is essential to calibrate your device. Do this in every case. You find the calibration in the software under Tools and Start Calib, which will guide you step by step through the necessary areas. Here you will be given in particular the different position for your throttle, which you will carry out one after the other. And you also have to carry out this calibration if you have changed the throttle 0 position, for example, or have installed the limitation. So calibrate with every change you make. Because only then is the 0 position you want also stored in the software accordingly and can be used in-game. And with the confirmation of the end of the calibration, your device is restarted and is ready for use. As an additional tip, you can also use the Tools and Axis area to display a window over the different axes of your joystick and see how far errors have sneaked in during calibration. Because here, this view can be very helpful if you have errors, for example, without using the stacks itself or moving the corresponding axis. But not only our different axes can be displayed in this way. Via the Buttons POV screen, we have the option of displaying all the functions of each individual button accordingly. And also you get the number of the different buttons. In addition, the somewhat limited-looking software offers the possibility of storing countless macros, double assigning various functions, working via virtual joysticks, and much more. This means that your options are not limited. But let's get to the last part, namely the use directly in Star Citizen. Because in order to adjust the settings accordingly, we go to Options in the game, and in our area we have the option of switching through the different connected joystick devices and basically introducing configurations. But this is not about button settings or which button you press for which action. For this, we have to switch between key bindings in the upper area and HOTAs and joysticks in the lower area. If we then click on Advanced Controls Customization in the lower left area, we will finally get to the configuration options you need. It is possible to use directly provided profiles, whereby we do not find a suitable profile, especially with the VKB STECS in the STG throttle configuration, since this throttle offers quite a few more functions than a normal throttle. This means we need to create our own profile. To assign corresponding functions, such as movement input, we go to the corresponding menu on the left side, double-click, and then press the corresponding button or axis at the regulator or the joystick. Subsequently, we have some time to confirm or reject the whole thing, and so we can assign all functions of the game to our VKB STECS step by step. But with over 40 functions, you have all the possibilities to adjust your stacks for especially Star Citizen or other space simulations accordingly. But take your time here. Our recommendation is to go through the different control inputs and the different functions of the VKB STECS depending on the game, such as Star Citizen. For this purpose, I especially use the Arena Commander, whereby we can simply try out the different control inputs on the ground or with the spaceship, for example offline. And of course, the STECS STG configuration offers a lot more options than a standard throttle, because we can actually completely handle the control of our spaceship with one hand, whereby we can, for example, give thrust with the normal throttle and the spaceship movements with the Space Combat Grip and the axis used there. Only a roll function, for example, a turning movement, is not possible here. As a conclusion, we can definitely recommend the VKB STECS STG configuration for space sims, but this is of course also possible for various other flight simulations where you can have a use for the throttle configuration. The scope of functions is huge, and we have almost everything covered with one device that you need as an approaching pilot or as a professional. Negative points are: the STECS uses high-quality plastic, but the most competitive products are made of metal, so a lack of a premium feeling. The analog rotary controls are also a little less precise than dedicated analog levers. For space simulations, however, this is not so important. Quite positively, the please and tilt mechanism, which offers an added value, is a good vary economics whereby we perform the rough throttle control with the shoulder muscles and the fine-tuning with the hand muscles. In addition, we have a lot of control elements and the modularity to expand the adjustment options even more. All in all, a clear recommendation, especially for space simulations. But what is your opinion on the VKB STECS in the Space Throttle Grip variant? Let us know in the comments, in our regular Twitch live streams or in our Discord. So, I say goodbye until next time. Thanks for watching and see you in the verse.